In California, if it's a special circumstances murder, which in this case would be robbery, armed robbery, that can carry the death penalty if the prosecutor decides to file for that, which they did. So 2 of the 3 people involved in the actual killing got the death penalty. Navarro got the death penalty. The minor who was involved in the killing, he got life without the possibility of parole. Deborah got life without the possibility of parole. And Mira, because she cooperated with the prosecution and was the one who really spilled the beans on everything that happened from the beginning, she was convicted of manslaughter, and she got a shorter prison sentence, and with good behavior, she could get out still at a relatively young age.
Just a feeling that we got everybody involved, and they're all found guilty. She can't hurt anybody else again. I mean, if she's going to kill her brother for the family business, who else may she kill down the road she gets upset with? And she was so cold. You're like, she's evil. You don't want her out on the streets.
When Deborah heard that her brother was going to get the... I don't think she was jealous of her brother so much as she was, she was jealous of the fact Dad was, pushing the business over to him. She's like, well, wait a minute, this is my nest egg too. That's where the jealousy came in between the 2 of them.
I do remember there being an argument between David and Deborah with regards to a load or a series of loads that were done off book, wherein a driver had basically told Deborah, David told me to do this and not put it in whatever paperwork and whatever bookkeeping procedures they had to keep it off book. And there was something about that was the client's desire, something like that. I do remember there was a specific argument between them that in her mind, that was it. He's never going to change. He's never going to learn. And in her mind, I guess, ultimately led to, I got to get rid of him.
Dave was Dave, so it's really hard to paint him in any picture other than what he was. I mean, he was a good man, and he was always smiling, and he was always happy. And it was really hard to not be infected by his happiness. So, I mean, he led a life of happiness. He raised good kids, and, I hope that they're doing good. And, what happened shouldn't dictate the future of our families, but always be remembered as, the man he was. I just wish it never happened. I just wish that we were able to work through our differences amicably as a family and move on, versus a power struggle that just went so far south that it was irreversible. I don't know, the life that I remember is a lot farther from reality than I live now.
Deborah always put herself up as being the person who was putting family first, and it was always about respect and her father and David taking advantage of the father, and that was always sort of permeating throughout everything she did. And my understanding was that there were times when David went to the father to ask for money to get things done that bothered Deborah. She thought it was manipulative. From my perspective, he's just a guy who died unnecessarily. I think that whether or not he was a good guy or a bad guy, a good husband, bad husband, that's not for me to say. It's not my place to say it. But I'll say this, no matter what he was, we have mechanisms in place to correct that, whether it's a civil lawsuit, whether it's criminal prosecution. When the Deborah Pernas of the world start making those decisions and start eliminating what they perceive to be social or financial threats to a group at large or an individual company, well, then we got a huge problem. So David Montemayor, to sum up, is just a guy who got what he didn't deserve. Deborah was not an easy person to sit next to, as I remember it. I joke around with my clients. I have fun when I'm in trial. I like being in trial. I will figure out somebody to pick on. At least usually it's the DA. Sometimes it's whoever, just to sort of entertain myself. Deborah, I remember the trial specifically not wanting to go to trial. I didn't want to be there. I didn't like being in the same room with her. she was just sort of ominous, and there was sort of a darkness around her. We all have gallows humor in this business, and we all sort of joke around, and I think it's a defense mechanism, and I also think it's just a product of doing this for so long. But when victim impact statements are read, that's when I become a human being again. And I sit there and I listen to it, and you really think about the fallout and the consequences and the sort of the ripple effect of what it is your client has just been convicted of doing. You don't think about that. You buy into David's a bad guy, and you buy into Edelmira did this, and you do that because you have to, for lack of a better word, sell it. But the victim impact statements have always been something that I, as a lawyer, I dread, not because of the effect on my client, but because of their effect on me. Whatever happened in the months preceding the murder, obviously I wasn't there, I don't know, but given the state of the evidence, given the fact that Deborah Perner had what I would like to think is a pretty competent lawyer, she was prosecuted fairly with a good judge and a fair jury, you have to say justice prevailed. I don't look at the outcome, I look at the process, and if the process is fair, well then the outcome is one that we all have to live with.
My little brothers called me one day, and it was probably like 3 or 4 in the morning, and told me the police just kicked the door in and took Mom. So I immediately rushed to the house and talked to my brothers, found out what was going on. I have no idea what's going on as far as why they took my mom in that manner. So I rushed down to the police station, tried to ask the detectives, like, you got your wires crossed on this one here, You got my mom, she just lost your brother. You're wrong. We had nothing to go off of. It was just complete confusion with the murder and the individuals involved, and then my mom being arrested, confusion after confusion. I'm 18 years old. I just graduated 2 months before. I'm just trying to deal with the fact that, we're losing everything. My brother's got to go live somewhere else now, and now I have to take care of what I have to take care of. We were working with the attorneys on any and every tool that they could utilize to, bring her to, what we thought should be, the ending of this. She was devastated, but she was adamant that this was all going to, show out, that she was going to be shown innocent, and she didn't do anything. She never acted nervous or anything like that in front of me. The difference was she was still stressful. She was still stressing at, but we thought it was just her trying to figure out who murdered Dave, so we don't know. Everybody's trying to figure it out. Everybody's doing their own little investigating or their own little, I know this, or, you know what I'm saying? So everybody had their own agenda or their own standpoint. My grandfather, he probably just tried to where it, as like not affecting him as much. He was always there for my mom. He never once allowed the case or even the verdict to dictate his relationship with her. So he was a very much intricate part of her her resolution, before and after the verdict, because he was always there for her. He was always strongly there for her, strongly. Whereas I wasn't after I heard what had happened. And he's probably obviously lost the most in this out of everything. Up until this, he put a lot of his finances into it, which he never recouped, and then to keep the business afloat. And then the business was eventually sold for pennies. We don't have a future as far as a family anymore. There's been a crack or a division within the family as far as which side are you on now. He got a lot of scrutiny from his family, from Texas, and friends and relatives. Being in the paper and being on the news really didn't help much. But at the end of the day, he just didn't let the fact that was his baby girl be affected, for sure.
Welcome back to Crime Time Podcast. And what you saw there, that was from an episode of the show Snapped on Oxygen. If you're a true crime fan, keep up on true crime content, I'm sure you've seen that show numerous times. And that's from an episode that aired back in 2016. And why we're pulling that clip up, it ties in with this shocking true crime story that just ended. Well, not ended, as the victims will live on with this forever. And many people are still feeling the effects of this crime. But one of the perpetrators in the crime, their book, their chapter, I guess, came to a close in a crazy way. We're going to tie it all together for you. Stay tuned. It has to deal with the Mexican Mafia, family drama, which is what you were hearing in there about that crime, and much, much more. But aside from the family, you also heard police detectives that worked on the case, and you heard an attorney that was talking about this woman, Murd3r4, who he just described her as pure evil. Being an attorney, people often wonder, how can people defend criminals and, be in that element, and does it mess people up? Do they get out of touch with good and evil, right and wrong, morality? And you heard him. He typically tries to do what he has to do to get through doing his job and make the most of some really bad situations. And he was more or less just saying this woman was just unlikable. You heard the one detective say she's just flat out evil. And it all came down to her being mad that she wanted to inherit this family business, but things didn't go exactly her way. And she got involved with a Pacoima street gang that has ties to the Mexican Mafia. And you heard that one detective saying that everyone paid the price. Justice was truly served in this horrible case where the one guy was killed, her brother, which we'll talk a little bit more about. The business in which we're talking of was called Interfreight Transport, a storage and moving facility, family business in Rancho Dominguez, California, which I believe is just south of Compton. And this woman, Murd3r4, worked for the family, her own family, at this business. And, the family, when they were trying to move on and retire, were trying to figure out what to do, who to pass the business down. And I guess they were going to split the business like co-owners between her and a brother. And for whatever reason, she didn't like that idea, or whatever the case was, and she split and left. Later, coming back, still trying to make ends meet as a single mother, she started getting into it with her little brother, David, who is the victim, the one-armed man you'll hear him referenced as, that was killed. The victim is of this horrific crime. And you heard this Murd3r4 woman's son talking about that when the police kicked down the door, they were like, what's going on? She assured them that she had nothing to do with this. But as things, played on, everything was uncovered. And this little brother that she was working with, David, once again, the one-armed man, the victim who was killed, there was some rumor circulating that he was stealing money from the business and storing it in coffee cans at his house. And she wanted to kill him to just be able to get closer to taking over the business. And a secretary who worked there, who ended up cooperating, her name was Murd3r4. And I guess Murd3r4 knew she had ties to the streets and knew some people that were gang members. As it says, she went to her and said, I need David to disappear. I need him taken care of. And the girl was like, I can't really help you out with that. And she said, no, but you know people who can. And she put her in touch with her drug dealer and got tapped in with these gangbangers, in which we're speaking of, who carried out these crimes that you're the detective saying everyone paid the price. 2 of them got the death penalty. And, they set it all up that they were going to abduct this man, which they did, David, with the one arm. And they told him, hey, we're going to get that money from the coffee cans at your house. And somehow he broke free from them, ran away. They shot him in the back of the head and bounced, right? Well, there was a witness who got a partial plate, and through that, the police were able to track down the car. They went on a 30-minute high-speed chase, and when they made arrests and everything, in the car, they found a note that had David's address along with the words one arm. So him having one arm played a big part in this case being solved. So at the end of the day, the detectives knew they had the right guys, the right perpetrators of the crime. And, they had the secretary reach out to the sister, Murd3r4, who this episode of Oxygen was about, and start talking to her about the crime. And right away from her responses, they could tell she's guilty and she took part in this. She set this all up, and all the arrests were made. Everyone was in jail. In this case, was going to trial. Some people took plea bargains. The secretary who cooperated, but for the most part, everyone was going to court.
A jury recommended Friday that a gang member from Castaic be executed for his role in the kidnap murder of a Buena Park businessman and the attempted murder of a co-defendant in jail. Alberto Martinez, 32, was the getaway driver during the abduction and shooting death of David Montemayor on October 2, 2002. A jury in Santa Ana convicted Martinez of murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and street terrorism, along with the special circumstances of murder for financial gain, murder during a robbery, murder during a kidnapping, and murder to benefit a gang. He was also convicted of trying to kill co-defendant Anthony Navarro while the two were in custody and awaiting a court hearing. Martinez has 3 drug convictions from the late 1990s and escaped from jail in 1999. According to testimony during his trial, Martinez and 3 other gang members were recruited to kidnap and kill Montemayor because his sister, Murd3r4, objected to the victim taking control of the family's moving and storage business. Perna was convicted on October 28, 2005, of masterminding the murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Gerardo Lopez, 25, of Pacoima, was sentenced on June 2, 2006, to life in prison without the possibility of parole, and Navarro was sentenced to death on July 11, 2008. Armando Macias, 24, of Lancaster, is scheduled to go on trial in September. Prosecutors said they will seek the death penalty if he is convicted.
All right, so that news was from some time later when this family business murder for hire plot court case had all played out. In the end, 2 death penalties. There was a minor that got life. Deborah, the sister who was jealous and wanted the family business, got life. And Mira, the secretary, she got manslaughter for her cooperation. But the one guy you heard mentioned in there, Alberto Martinez, he's the individual we're talking about who his chapter, his book, just came to a close as he was on death row. But something even crazier when this case was going on, he tried to kill this Navarro guy, one of his co-defendants, who also got the death penalty. He tried to kill him in jail. I think all the co-defendants they did, because it turned out that, he and this dude had been to jail before for robbery, selling crystal meth. And, word got out that he was an informant for the feds. And they tried to kill him, stabbing him up in custody while they were locked up. But he lived. But the guy we're talking about here, Alberto Martinez, you heard, he had a long criminal history other than this. He had 3 other drug convictions. He actually escaped from jail once in 1999. And he had a whole nother case that he was involved in that he got a life sentence. So he had a death sentence and a life sentence. But since he had been locked down all this time, like we said, this case, the killing, the murder for hire, storage, family drama, murder plot, that happened back in 2002. And I think he was in his 20s then, like 24 years old. He had already did 3 bids for drug cases prior to that. He escaped from jail in 99. From then all the way now in 2002, being in custody on death row and also concurrently serving a life sentence. So here we are in 2024. He's done a whole lot of time. Like we said, he had ties to this Pacoima street gang and the Mexican Mafia. It's, it was said that he had status, that he would speak to a lot of women, had some women falling in love with him from a cell phone that he had in jail. He arranged hits. Like, he had some serious juice, some serious pull and status with the Mexican Mafia. And on the West Coast, from my understanding, they, kind of like run the prison system in a sense. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments below, but this guy had serious status. But what happened is he was just killed by 3 inmates in Calipatria State Prison in Imperial County on Thursday. And it sounds pretty brutal what happened. 3 inmates, Tyler A. Lua, he was observed by prison staff striking Martinez and knocking him to the ground before he continued to hit him. He eventually stepped away from Martinez, but 2 other inmates, Jorge Larios and Luis Beltran, began striking Martinez as he laid motionless on the ground. Staff ended up coming over, using their pepper spray and batons to break it up. And they found 2 manufactured weapons, which pretty much sounds like shanks to me. And, this dude was dead. There were emergency responders that got called, and, they performed life-saving measures. And he was transported to the prison's treatment area, and he was like DOA. This happened at 2:20 p.m. This just happened. And Martinez was now 46. So like we said, this guy had been doing time. Again, he was arrested. I think he was 24 in 02, back when this murder plot that we spoke on here about happened. He had did 3 bids prior to this escape from prison, probably in his early 20s and teen years. He also had another situation that he was doing a life sentence on, and he was known to be solid and have status with the Mexican Mafia. But for whatever reason, somehow 3 inmates made a move on him and killed him. It says Martinez, 46, was most recently received from Orange County on August 17, 2010, and placed on condemned status, which, that's death row for first-degree murder. He was also sentenced to life with the possibility of parole for attempted first-degree murder with an enhancement for street gang activity and 2 years for street gang activity, a sentence that was to be served concurrently with the condemned death sentence. And you want to know something that's pretty crazy too? The last executed inmate in California was in 2006. And I think that was Tookie, man. I feel like they should have let Tookie live. He won a Nobel Peace Prize. Yes, he took people's lives, the death penalty is a thing a lot of people believe in, some don't, but there's a long appeal process and all that. Like we're saying, the last time someone was actually put to death in Cali was in 06, and I think it was Tookie. And currently there was 623 inmates on death row. So with all the appeals, with everything that goes on, it's a long process. You can be on death row forever. I think you're more likely to die from old age or natural causes or something like this rather than being put to death or have your sentence commuted to a life sentence or something like that. So 623 current Cali inmates on death row. I guess now we can say 622 with the death of Alberto Martinez. And I don't know, with him being locked down all this time and known to be somewhat of a shot caller, reportedly, from what's being put out there in the news and reports coming from the prison sentence, this guy wasn't to be messed with. But 3 people beat him down and shanked him. Tyler A. Lua, again, Jorge Larios, and Luis Beltran. There's an investigation going on, but the guards witnessed him do this, broke it up with the baton, the pepper spray. And I don't know, you know, they took this guy out. So what a pretty crazy story, in my opinion. Comment and let me know if you agree. This individual who just had nothing but a life of crime and gang activity and first-degree murder, and he was the getaway driver, I believe, in the Interfreight Transport Storage Facility, you know, the Deborah Perna initiated murder, where she sought out these gangbangers to kill her brother, to try to steal the money and get control of the family business. Like, this dude did all this time, sat on death row, was known as a heavy hitter, but was killed. It says, according to the Los Angeles Times, Martinez was a powerful member of a Mexican mafia who orchestrated murders while on death row and communicated with a woman from Mexico using a cell phone he was prohibited from having. And, you know, it's like, you'd think he would have been safe, you know, like these three individuals just come in there and kill him. Now there's an investigation going on. They've been put in administrative segregation, the hole or whatever. But I wonder what happened. How do you go from a shot caller, tapped in, talking with people from Mexico and everything like that? You kept it solid all these years. You never snitched, from what I know. You know what I mean? He tried to kill his co-defendant in that storage, you know, family business stuff that was on the Oxygen clip that we played. Him and the other guys shanked up the one guy because they found out he was an informant. Like, I don't know, did this dude do some telling, or what did he do to ruffle some feathers to get killed like that? The three inmates that killed him, Lua, 25, he just was received from San Bernardino County, January 31st, 2019, sentenced to 19 years in prison for attempted second-degree murder with an enhancement for use of a firearm. He also, while being locked up, got sentenced to 2 additional years for having drugs in prison. Larios, 33, he came from Riverside County, July 5th, 2016. He was sentenced to 32 years and 4 months in prison for attempted second-degree murder with enhancements for inflicting great bodily injury, discharge of a firearm in street gang activity, and commission of a violent felony. And Beltran, 31, he came from Los Angeles County, April 6, 2023, so just last year. And he was also sentenced to life without parole for first-degree murder with enhancements for intentional discharge of a firearm causing great bodily injury or death in possession of a firearm as a felon. So, you know, there you have it, man. A pretty crazy story, in my opinion, when you tie it all together. A life of crime, a life of gang banging, the Mexican mafia, just horrific crimes, people being murdered. And, you know, at the end of the day, all the status this guy had didn't seem to matter. You know, I'm going to follow this case and see if more information comes out. You know, did he do some telling? Did he do something behind the wall? Was that an orchestrated hit? We'll have to wait and see. But Alberto Martinez, spending pretty much his whole life in prison, shanked and beat to death in prison after all these years. Get in the comments, share your thoughts, and stay tuned for more true crime content. You know, for those who know more about the Mexican mafia and West Coast prison politics, share your thoughts on all this. Once again, this happened at Calipatria State Prison in Imperial County, California, while he was on death row and serving a concurrent life sentence. I don't know why, it just made me think of the Whitey Bulger case. That was something that I wanted to cover in the news. Anyone, if you made it thus far in the video, comment and let me know if you have, and let me know if you'd be interested to hear more about the Whitey Bulger case, as, you know, he was a guy that pretty much at one point in time with the winter what's it called? The Winter Hill Gang in Boston ran the city. You know, he was an informant. He says he wasn't, that he just was exploiting a relationship with someone that he knew was a federal, agent that he grew up with in the same projects, which that agent ended up doing time as well, you know, helping Whitey Bulger be able to get away with everything he was doing. They, you know, just wanted to put away the Italian mob, and they did. And Whitey basically operated with no fear of the feds until the feds were on him. And that agent gave him the heads up for Whitey Bulger to go on the run, which he was for years. The agent got a whole bunch of time in prison, but Whitey Bulger was killed a couple years ago in prison, and the inmate who killed him was just going through the court process recently. I saw some updates about it, so comment and let me know if you're intrigued by that story as well. It just reminds me of the story because it's two people who were known to have some status and known to, I guess, not be fucked with, but when it came down to it, they got fucked with bad in prison, brutally murdered. So that's gonna do it for this one. Thank you again for watching. Stay tuned for more true crime content, crime stories, and all that. This is Crime Time Podcast. I'll catch you on the next video. Peace.